Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Noclip podcast. My name's Jesse Guarascia. I'm not Irish, but I am hosting this week for Danny O'Dwyer, who's on vacation. Hope he's having a good time, kicking his feet up and taking a break. But I'm not alone. I'm joined by Frank Howley.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
Jesse. Jesse, we are always so excited to have you back. You have the best radio voice.
No.
You're fantastic. Your host. You're incredible. You're the editor. You're you're the best. So I'm excited to have Jesse. We love you. How have you been? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's been a while since I've been on here. Had a couple weird medical things going on, but it's all chill. We're living. The doc gave me the okay. I'm healthy as something that's healthy, and they, gave me the all good. Big thumbs up. I'm happy to be here. I did miss you guys. It's been a little bit, but I'm just so busy. I'm busy doing so many things, and schedules don't line up. You're on the West Coast, so it's like 3 hours behind, and whatever. It's all good. It's all good. I love getting to come on here when I do. But we still got Jeremy Jane with us, by the way. Jeremy, hello.
Hey,
It's a three.
Jesse, it's a pleasure to see you, man.
Oh.
Also, I just washed my face, and astute viewers may notice that my mustache is dripping sink water, which is it's a very professional thing to do when you show up on cameras, to be dripping from the mustache, I would say.
Yeah, that dripping anywhere, I feel like, on camera is usually not particularly sightly.
It's a power move to just be like sweaty or just all wet, and it would have been better if I left it mysterious, because people would have been like, why is he like profusely sweating in front of his computer?
Is it really hot? I guess it could be for you guys. Is it really hot still?
It is pretty hot,
Yeah.
but it has nothing to do with my lack of professionality.
Sure, yeah. It's like a spider ham in the Into the Spider-Verse. My hands are wet. Just wash them. No other reason. Like, why's your face wet? Who's to say? By the way, this is episode 140 of the Noclip podcast. I don't have a fun word that rhymes with 140. I feel like Danny always opens with a fun rhyme. What do we got? Jordy? Feeling Jordy?
Doing the Doherty?
Feeling
Rick and Morty.
Rick and
Nordy.
Morty. Yeah, feeling what? Sorry?
Feeling Nordy.
Feeling naughty in the Matilda musical. There's like a whole song that's like,
yeah.
we're a little bit naughty.
Little bit
We can
naughty.
do
Yeah.
just what we like. Yeah.
There you go.
So they say naughty.
British accents for the rest of the podcast. That'll be good. Before we get into talking about games, by the way, there's so many games. I have not played that many, but there are so many that exist. If you'd like to support this 100% ad-free podcast, fund our documentaries, and get access to a bunch of bonuses, including videos, bonus podcast episodes, and Discord access, you can do so at patreon.com/noclip. You can also join our Battle Pass holders, the Battle Passers, Battle Royale games, Arno, Richard Matherson, James Brown, Jason Drury, Mark Rojas, Ryan Cobb, Cody Krieger, Tucker Morgan, Crimson Cyclist, Sven Huster, Carson, Tim Robinson, Forrest Pruitt. This is a long list now, by the way. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodness gracious. Andy Fegan, Darren Birmingham. Sorry, new name. I'm getting used to these ones. Eric Hamilton Schneider. Gabriel Ladd. Alex Sharp. Alex Goucher. George Zirkotis. Jacob Godserve. Silvintro? Is that supposed to be like cilantro? Like it's an upside down
it has
A?
like the upside down,
Yeah.
the V for the A. Yeah. That's like Roman cilantro.
Roman cilantro. I wonder what that tastes like. Gamey. James Andrew Adams, Tohir Tiliev, and Ryson. Every time that comes up, I just think of Breaking Bad.
Breaking
Yeah.
Bad? Yeah, me too.
What's Ryson supporting the podcast?
I just think of Walt being like, I had to. I don't even remember what the line is, but it like kind of an ersatz, like, I had to do it, Jesse.
Yeah. Oh.
I don't really remember what they talk about though.
No, you're right. Yeah, I think he poisoned a child or something to get Jesse to get back in the game.
Doesn't he also put ricin in a cigarette, and then somehow the kid I don't know.
Something like
Does
that.
the kid smoke the cigarettes?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, kids love cigarettes. If I poison the cigarette, that kid will die.
Always going into his mom's purse, stealing out one of them. It's a very elaborate plan he had to set up to get this kid.
He's a teacher. He knows that kids love to smoke.
This is true. Yeah, he was a high school teacher. You think they'd have better benefits, right?
Yeah,
No?
you would think so. This is an American television show.
That's
Jesse.
a good point. Yeah, I guess if it was Canadian, it would be 2 episodes. It would just be Walt going to the doctor, and the
He'd be
doctor
like,
saying, "Okay,
I'm sick," and they'd be like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry." And he'd
okay,
be like,
bud,
"Oh,
come on
okay.
in. We'll help you with that.
Come
there.
on in,
Don't worry,
okay.
there, bud. Come on.
How about?
Oh, buddy.
I like that show so much better. Let's make that. Let's make Canadian Breaking Bad.
Yeah, let's make a 2-episode series. Let's do it.
I feel like if you take the tragedy out of it, like so in response to the tragedy, Walt becomes this like violent maniac, and that's kind of the arc of the show that couches the tragedy in another wrapper.
Right.
I feel like if you just have 2 episodes where he just goes to an oncologist, that's just like Breaking Sad. You know what I mean? Like without him being a villain, it's just a sad show about a guy going to the doctor.
That's good. I like it as like a butterfly effect kind of thing, where like he had to be evil at some point. This was his moment. Then he doesn't have cancer, but now he's bald, so he's going to become evil anyway. As everyone knows, all bald people are evil. It's just a fact.
It's like a Marvel What If,
Ooh.
you know, where they do like alternate versions.
Yeah, what if
where
Ultron
like Spider-Man's a
sold meth?
samurai?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if Walt had good health care?
Well, then also instead of like, was it Los Pollos Hermanos, Gus Fring would manage a Tim Hortons.
Ooh,
that'd be
oh yeah.
Oh, that's good. This
really
is good.
good.
Delete the podcast for making this. Delete this episode.
Video games. Video games is what we usually talk about on here. Not normally, ethical ways to sell drugs or how to get away with healthcare fraud. But have we been playing many of them, gentlemen? Have we been playing many video games? Frank, what have you been up to? What have you been playing?
Yeah, my favorite type of game announcements are like when they announce it and it's just out. So QuakeCon happened and they dropped Quake 2. We actually like mentioned it last week because what had happened like weeks in advance is some ratings board somewhere leaked that there was a Quake 2 happening. I don't know when. It dropped. It was free on Game Pass. So this is Quake 2, I guess, remastered, but also with an extra campaign by Machine Games. There's Quake 2 N64 on it. It's $10. I think if you already have Quake 2 on your Steam library, you automatically get this new version. I got it on the Xbox. The coolest, biggest surprise with this Quake 2 remaster is you can co-op all of the campaigns on Xbox Live, or actually crossplay, so you can play with your PC friends or Xbox friends. So the last week I've been going through all the levels and getting achievements with my friends on Quake 2 co-op campaign, and it is so fun and goofy, and it reminds me of playing Halo co-op, because like when you die, typically like in Doom or Quake, you either restart the level or load a save. With Quake 2, as long as one of your other friends are alive, you just respawn next to them. So we were just going through all of these levels, running around, hupping everywhere, blasting rockets and grenade launchers and stuff like that. And like, it's so fun. And I'd never touched Quake 2. This was the first one made like without John Romero, so I never really cared about it. But yeah, this came out of nowhere, and that's like kind of the only new or relevant game. I guess it's not new. Whatever, relevant game to share or talk about. But yeah, Quake 2 so far has been really fun.
Never has to be new or relevant. I feel like I love hearing when you're playing older games, or episodes from Liberty City you were talking about last week. That was a blast to listen to. I was like, yeah, gay Tony. But Quake 2. Okay, is this the RTX update? Like, does this have ray tracing on console or?
So that's a good question, because I saw it was like NVIDIA, was it like 2019 or 2021? They put up this like RTX update, but this is now a newer version.
Oh, okay.
I don't know all the specifics. I do know like, they boast like 120 frames. You can do it if you have that a TV compatible with Xbox. Like, I don't know, but it's a lot of stuff is in there. There's also deathmatch and multiplayer stuff, but I don't know if there's RTX on console. I feel like I always like turn off bloom and extra effects.
Yeah, motion blur,
it's
0.
Yeah. But it shouldn't have any trouble, hitting max performance issues on console or PC.
I was gonna say 120 FPS. That's it. That's all they're gonna do.
Yeah,
can't do 600. It's Quake 2.
Yeah, I haven't touched on PC, and I bet it's better. The one thing that sucks playing on Xbox is like I've tried doing the multiplayer deathmatch stuff, and like you just get destroyed if you're playing against PC players, obviously. Right. But like it's still fun and goofy. Like, I don't know. I love that art style. Again, like anytime you have like those chunky polygon like graphics are very, very fun to mess around in. So yeah, Quake 2. I don't know if I have anything deeper to say than that. Oh, the one thing I kind of mentioned it, but like they include the N64 campaign in this, which is its own separate thing. They made like smaller versions of a lot of the levels, and you can beat it in like an hour. And the one thing that surprised me playing Quake 2 is there's so much platforming in this game. I know Quake 1, they introduced some verticality. You could like rocket jump to get secrets and stuff, but a lot of Quake 2 are like this weirdly, like it's almost like playing Mario or something, where you have to jump on platforms as they're moving. There's like elevator, not puzzles. You have to dodge lasers and stuff. So like it's fun playing this. It's also in multiplayer, as everyone has to like get through the gauntlet to go through it. So yeah, it surprised me. It's goofy and pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I want to play this. I've never played a Quake game in my entire life, but I have a deep appreciation for arena shooters because they're obviously super influential on, like if you play something like Apex Legends, it obviously comes out of Respawn that has some, Call of Duty people working on it and stuff like that. So it has that side of the FPS genre in the equation. Yeah. But I've always felt like it really, things like Apex with high mobility and like a high TTK are drawing on FPS more because it's more about just like movement and kind of that balance between moving quick and zipping all over the place, but also tracking your opponents and landing like a bunch of shots. Like in a Call of Duty, you pop around the corner and pull the trigger and kill like 2 people, and then you go to work the next day. You know what I mean? Like it's just I feel like it's this kind of like very simple loop, and things like Apex and even like Team Fortress 2. Like I kind of missed AFPS, but I feel like I got it secondhand through the things that influenced. But I feel like it's been a tough road for AFPS because it feels like it's like RTS where it's like a dated genre. Like people just think of it as kind of like out of vogue. There was a game called. Do you guys ever play Diabolical by any chance?
No. Diabolical.
Okay, so there was a game called Diabolical, indie arena first-person shooter. I don't really know how to describe it. You played like these big egg-looking dudes, like these big orbs, and it was essentially just a kind of an indie contemporary AFPS, and it was super fun. But I think the community I had a friend who was really into it, and the community towards the end was so small that you'd hop into a server and you'd see like the same 8 guys just hopping around in there. It was just real sad. You know what I mean?
It's funny, but it's sad.
But yeah, it was. It was kind of like going to the dive bar in your local town where it's like, oh, Jim's here again. He's always here.
How's the wife?
He's hitting the bottle hard tonight. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it's cool to see AFPS getting a little bit of recognition because I feel like it's an important genre that I kind of slept on until I saw its influence in other things. So.
No, definitely. I mean, I haven't. I'm kind of in the same boat. I haven't played any Quake games, but I do have a respect for the sort of jumping around, bouncing, bunny hopping, shooting. It's exciting. I mean, Ultra Kill from a couple years ago it came out in early access, but that sort of boomer shooter that's more focused on the action and less on the sort of visual aesthetic, I think is so much fun. Ultra Kill especially. If you haven't checked that out and you like Quake, you're missing out. Shooting a coin and having it kill things is like it's a tiny little projectile and it's great. It's great.
I love that mechanic. It's so clever. Yeah. It's such a good way to I dislike when games incorporate mini games and they feel like mini games, like they're cordoned off from the rest of the game. Yeah. I love when games do like little, like the active reload in Gears of War or shooting the coin in Ultra Kill. I love just little like seamless kind of like, oh, now I gotta like play the tiny little game to do better, and you know what I mean. But it feels like it's so seamlessly woven into the loop.
Totally,
I love it. Yeah, I don't know. That game is designed within an inch of its life.
I love that phrase. Oh, such a good. You guys use it all the time.
Designed within an inch of its life.
It's just a good phrase.
Yeah. I just picture like John Romero beating the shit out of like a level.
Be better.
Yeah, exactly. This corner could be tighter.
Quake 2 from Night Dive Studios, actually, it looks like, handled the remake this time around. They're kind of on fire, eh? What's going on? This is my Canadian coming out. They're kind of on fire, eh? What did they do earlier this year? System Shock.
They did System Shock,
right,
the System Shock remake. Yeah, I feel like it's very interesting that they've so successfully monetized a business model that is essentially kind of, like preservation. Like they're almost like a commercial games museum in some way, but instead of having a physical location where you go see stuff, they're just like taking old games and making them more available and kind of like rotating them back into the site. Because I mean, people could have just like gone and played Quake 2 with less features and everything, and it would have been, you know, old Quake 2. But it's cool to like recirculate that in. I don't know. I feel like that's good for it's like throwing compost on the game influence pile, you know what I mean? Like it's mixing it up. People are being like, oh yeah, remember Quake 2? And I don't know. I think it's good for games in general.
It's a purely reasonable comparison, but I feel like referring to anything as compost is like, we're just putting shit on the pile. Here's some shit. Enjoy the game.
Hey man, shit makes the world go round, all right? Yeah. If you've ever enjoyed an ear of corn, you're a shit lover, all right? And I count myself among them.
Speaking of shit lovers, Jeremy, how's Baldur's Gate 3? You having fun with that?
God. I'm like a pig in compost, dude. Baldur's Gate 3 is okay, so have you guys ever seen? This is gonna sound unrelated. I promise it's related. William Friedkin, the director, just passed away, and so the clip was going around again of him talking to Nick Winding Refn, the director of Drive. Have you guys ever seen the clip where Nick Refn refers to Drive as a masterpiece?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
And William Friedkin is so in the clip, Nick Refn is referring to his own movies as masterpieces, and William Friedkin, a much older, more seasoned, wiser, and more grounded director, turns around to the camera crew and he's like, "Is there a medic on the way? Like, have you guys heard the ambulance outside?" Because he's saying that like Nick Refn is insane for referring to a movie that came out like I think he was talking about Neon Demon and stuff too, but he was talking about movies that came out like a few years ago that he made as masterpieces. And Friedkin makes the point that we won't know about Drive and for another however many decades he says or whatever. Like things like 2001: A Space Odyssey. We can talk about whether or not it's a masterpiece because it's survived the test of time. It's still relevant. It's been hugely influential. And so like I feel like I've been trying to internalize that when I talk about games, because I think it's easy to play a game that you really love and get caught up and be like, oh, this is the game of the year. This is the best game ever. This is the best game. And I think it's important to recognize that like there is like a recency bias when you play games. So I'm trying not to overstate Baldur's Gate 3. I'm trying to give it the time and space it deserves.
All right, Jeremy,
that
give
being
us the
said,
butt. Give us the butt here. Let's hear it.
That being said, I think this is one of the best games ever fucking made. Like, oh my god, this is like Baldur's Gate 3 is the only video game ever made. It's just it's so unbelievable. I don't know. I don't even know where to start with it. Have you guys played much Baldur's Gate 3 before I go insane
Frank, did you
and
play
talk
it?
too much?
Because I know last week you hadn't.
No, I'm waiting for the console release. I should just play it now, but it's like I'll wait for the console release.
No, good call.
That makes sense. What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, I've played a little bit of it. I'm playing it co-op with Cass just because, like, if I played it alone, it'd be all I do for the rest of my life, probably, from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, she only plays games for a couple hours every once in a while, so it keeps me solid. Lets me play Final Fantasy 16 and then other games when they come out. So it's the sort of background thing. But yeah, we've made it in my head like 10% of the way through Act 1. From looking online, I've made it 0.1% of the way through Act 1. Yeah.
It's a really big... I'm still Act 1 and I have... Well, I was gonna say over 20 hours, but I do a lot of save scumming because as much as it's fun to fail rolls sometimes, I do feel like the one thing that Disco Elysium does better than any other CRPG is making failure fun. So like in Disco Elysium, I did not do a lot of save scumming because I would fail a save roll and then something funny would happen. And I'd be like, oh, that's canonical because Harry is like a drunk fool and this is funny. Whereas Baldur's Gate, I want things to go right. So I am doing a lot of save scumming. So my playtime is probably about 5 hours higher than the playtime on my save file. Which means I've spent about 5 hours like failing battles and save scumming to manipulate reality into the form I want it to.
Right.
So yeah, the Act 1 is absolutely massive, so no shame in that. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about like the thing that I think is interesting about Baldur's Gate 3, besides all the things it does immaculately, besides all the things that Divinity Original Sin did as well, I think that the thing that's interesting to me about Baldur's Gate 3 is that it's incredibly popular. Like it's as popular. I mean, I haven't looked at the sales figures, but the general zeitgeist I'm getting is that the sales figures are massive. I don't know how it stacks up to something like Tears of the Kingdom, but I feel like those are two of the best-selling games of the year. I think that's fair to say. And it's interesting to me because Tears of the Kingdom feels very much like it's a Zelda game that's, like Breath of the Wild, taking lessons from a lot of AAA game design, like big open worlds and like little hotspots and POIs throughout it. I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity Original Sin 2 is kind of the antidote for that to me, because I don't particularly enjoy big open world games and that side of AAA design. In fact, I liked Breath of the Wild kind of in spite of it. But I feel like they have so much open space, and I feel like what happens is when you're in it and in those first few hours, you have like the novelty of like, oh, there's balloons and I can make them fly, and there's like gliders and stuff. And I feel like that allows me to suspend my disbelief, and it allows me to immerse myself in this world and be like, oh, I'm in Hyrule. I'm like walking by a riverside. Right. I'm wandering in the forest. But I feel like when the novelty of those things wears off and I'm doing my 28th shrine puzzle and I'm finding another encampment and I'm starting to find the same weapons, I do feel like the big open worlds start to feel like they are just empty space. I think when you're in the wash of novelty initially, you're like, this is an empty space, this is the world. And then I think when that fades away, it feels big and empty to me. And that happens to me with almost every big open world game. And I think Baldur's Gate 3 is interesting because it is not trying to create a like a simulated world in some sense, in terms of like spatially and the design, level design, and like the layout of things. Everything is very close together, and the environments are incredibly dense. And so if you look at it like in the abstract, it's almost like a board game, or like what I imagine D&D plays like, just like a room full of very dense encounters and a lot of depth to it. And I think it's interesting because it's like the density of environments makes it feel like there's no wasted space. It feels like when there is empty space in Baldur's Gate, it's incredibly rare, and it's usually just a little buffer between two incredibly deep zones with like narrative depth, combat depth, whatever you want, experiential depth. And so I don't know. I just feel like Baldur's Gate 3 is like it's the villain to everything I don't like about AAA game design's Spider-Man hero. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's like small and dense and weird, and like it's a clearly simulated world. It doesn't feel like real places, but it's so much more experientially interesting for me to inhabit.
I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, despite the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 is obviously crafted by a bunch of very talented people, and there's only a certain amount of things that they can do, they've done this sort of like mental playground almost. It's, I think it's easy to compare it to a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons. Like, they are already considering a handful of really interesting things, and then either through playtesting, or I'm sure being in early access allowed them to really refine this sort of thing. They're able to go, oh, this dumb little thing someone wants to do, or like this, oh, there's a hole. Like, what could the hole be? They made a character that happens to be able to go in the hole. Like, what's in the hole? They go in, and it's just like a chest with a painting. And you're like, what's that for? It's nothing. But, like, they have so many scenarios set up that make the world feel like it's more full than it actually is, even if it's something small, even if it's something dumb that doesn't matter, and they push you back on the path, at least from where I'm at, again, very early on. But they're really good at, like, giving you a couple of strands of things that you could go and follow, and along the way, the world opens itself up in this way that just feels so organic and so like intentional, but also like you're the only person that's ever tried to do that thing. I think that's part of what I like about this game, and why I think Cassie kind of got into it, because she doesn't really like, my fiance doesn't really like RPGs in general, things where you're making a lot of choices. She hates D&D. I used to play it for 2 years straight, my buddy's custom campaign, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. But every time she heard me playing it, she was like, "This is so dumb. What are you doing?" And now she's like, "We gotta go follow the druid. I gotta know what's going on." Or like, "How do I get in that kid's camp? What's going on there? How do I talk to them?" So I think, and this is what I think it really nails for people who haven't played D&D, who want to kind of get into that role-playing element of it as well, to speak on that, is like D&D, and Frank, you probably know this from when you were doing Big Dogs, there's like, especially if you're playing 5e, you're rolling the dice a lot. You're rolling the dice way too much. And in real life, I don't know, whenever I was in combat, I hated doing that. Frank, did you, like, whenever you were in combat, were you just rolling the dice? You're like, can we just get this fight over with?
Yeah, I feel like the dice part, like the thing I liked about D&D was the improv and like the riffing, and also just joking with the friends. When it came to actually like having to do the game mechanics, I was like, that's why I like a lot of games. I'll mash X, just next thing, don't care. Let me get to the fun. Yep. It's like, that's how I felt. I get the science behind it, and I like, like the chance and random element, and things can go, in other directions. But it's like, that's where things kind of get boring for me, or I turn off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what this game kind of solves, because like there's still a lot of role playing and a lot of like, because I made a bard, because I'm always playing a bard because I love being annoying, and you get to do like tons of persuasion and like deception and stuff, and there's lots of opportunities to interact with characters, and like if you get to speak with animals, trust me, you're gonna run into some cows pretty early on. Talk to the cows. But like there's so many little things and interactions you can do, and then the combat, and this is what I think they really solved, is and you guys talked about this last week with the dice rolling and the sort of juice that they inject into the game to give you this element of like enjoyment of watching the dice rolls. There's so many opportunities where they could have just not done that sort of thing, where they could have just not added the juice, where they could have just let the dice roll and showed you the number or whatever. But like that element of it, I feel like the fact that watching it roll is so fun is what makes it so enjoyable. And I think for RPGs and games, there's a lot of scenarios where I feel like you lose, especially in Fallout games and newer Fallout games. You don't get the opportunity to pick a dialogue option because you don't have a certain trait. You don't have enough perception or whatever, right? The thing that I liked about Dungeons and Dragons, and I think the thing that works here and the thing that worked in Divinity, I've only played the first Original Sin, but the thing that works in those games is you can pick something that your character's not necessarily proficient at, but still have the chance for it to work. So there's that chance and that role that you get to do, whether it's literal or it's behind the scenes or whatever, where you have the chance for something to happen that normally wouldn't. You don't have to like be good at it to give it a shot. You can just try it. And like that's so much fun. Like that there's joy in that, you know?
Yeah, it also shows you. It's interesting because I've never done a full replay of Divinity: Original Sin 2, which I feel like is a fair comparison because they're very similar, like systems wise. But going into those roles and being like, oh, if I had a character who was like a stronger dex build, this would be a moment where they would really shine. I feel like it shows you. It makes your playthrough feel like special because you're seeing other people's parallel playthroughs like simulated in your brain as you're seeing these alternate strands. Or like if you don't have a character who can talk to animals and there's a situation where you're like, oh, if only I could like talk to that ox, I bet I could figure this out or something. I don't know. It just by seeing all of the other possibilities around you, it makes you feel like you're in your own lane. And even if you never replay the game, it still feels like you're having this special kind of like tailored playthrough that's unique to you.
Is that the key to making a good choice-based narrative game or like RPG or anything like that? Is the key to
having other
obvious things that you couldn't do because of your character? Like, is that what makes it feel big?
That's a good question. I'm inclined to say yes because I think that like. I think having in like old games like a N64 era, there'd be a secret that or actually, let me use a more contemporary example. I feel like Signalis, without spoiling anything about Signalis, because you should play Signalis if you haven't played it. There are secrets in Signalis that you would never figure out on your own, and it took the entire Signalis community to put them together. Yeah. And I feel like even though I didn't solve it, knowing that exists in the game makes my playthrough feel more special because I'm like interacting with a game that has such rarefied experiences within it that I don't know, like missable content is such an important part of having like a special playthrough, even if your playthrough is the one that misses all of it. I feel like it's kind of like what I've talked about this before, but in Star Wars Galaxies, a game that was kind of like a flawed masterpiece, they had a Jedi system where players could become player character Jedis, but it was so incredibly rare that no one figured it out. I think Sony gave Ralph Koster, the lead designer, an ultimatum at some point where they're like, listen, Ralph, we need a Jedi by Christmas, dude. Like there's no Jedis in this game about Star Wars. And the reason is because the goals were under the hood and they were obfuscated by the systems. So a character would be pooled into different like seeds of how they became a Jedi, but the game would not tell you what those were. And there were things like, go to the highest point on 3 different planets, visit like every planet, things like that. And I think that when I played Star Wars Galaxies, the fact that I could be a Jedi but probably never would felt more special than if I was a Jedi for some reason. So yeah, I don't know. I think like rarefied experiences existing in the world give you the feeling that you're not being catered to or pandered to. Like the game was designed to be cool and interesting and have special experiences, and you may not be the person who experiences those things, those rarefied little gems, but just knowing they exist, I feel like makes the whole experience more special.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, like you're not being handed an experience. It feels like you are the one sort of deciding what happens to you, what happens around you. Yeah, it's a special game.
Yeah, they have to be missable. They have to be missable, or like, or your experiences. It actually makes, even if your experiences are more commonplace, like I'm sure there are a million things in Baldur's Gate 3 that everyone experiences because they're necessary parts of just the core storyline. Although I'm pretty early, so I don't know how much it diverges, but I think that's fair to say, at least for Act 1. And even those like more common events, I think, are more like rarefied.
But even if it's not like special big branches that are created, right? Like the Telltale games, the sort of post-Walking Dead titles, they all found this thing they could do where they sort of funnel you back into the same endpoint, but because each smaller choice is different enough, it still felt special. Like, who knows really what happens if you picked between these two characters? Do things really change? Like, not on a fundamental level, but you feel your impact on the story. You feel like there's a branch that you have cut off as a player, and that feels really special. Like, I don't think consciously anyone's thinking, oh, I've decided that this entire route of the game isn't going to happen. But when you see that sort of pop-up of like, whoever, like Ellie will remember this or whatever, you get excited. You get like, oh, this is an important thing I have dictated on this game. And I feel like Baldur's Gate does that same sort of thing where like you decide very early on, in some cases, which characters you want to kill, who you want to bring along with you. Maybe you make a mistake and pick the wrong name and end up killing an important main character. And that sort of stuff feels, it makes, we just keep saying it, but it makes your playthrough feel like it's your own. It makes it feel special in a way that so few games have. And there's a reason this is getting 90s across the board and 100s across the board, because it's special.
I'm very glad to see it, because CRPG as a genre is definitely, I mean, Danny has been getting into it, which has been nice to see someone like immersing themselves in it for the first time. But it really is just, I don't know, man. Those were the games that I played as a kid that really like showed me how much potential games have as a storytelling medium, as like an immersive experience, in the way that like when you see a really good piece of cinema and it touches you and you're like, holy shit, like, geez, you like walk out of the movie theater and have to like put your life back together. The other thing I wrote down is that I feel like also, I'm not trying to shit on Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's a good game.
Hear that, Nintendo?
It is a game.
Fucking hate you here at Noclip.
I was so excited for Tears of the Kingdom, and I just haven't been able to finish it. I just don't really like it that much.
Damn.
And I feel really sad. I feel really sad about that.
Shit, 5 out of 10.
Dude, we'll have to talk about it more in depth sometime, but it's actually changed my mind a little bit about Breath of the Wild.
Whoa.
Because I've always been a Breath of the Wild defender for years. Like, even the people who were talking about weapon degradation.
So you're having your winding refn moment right now. You're having your, like,
I know.
It wasn't a masterpiece.
Does it stand the test of time? I know.
Yeah.
Dude, I hear him out there, because I'm code red over here. I don't know. It made me think, okay, here's my little take on it, I guess. And again, if you like Tears of the Kingdom, you have succeeded where I have failed, because I want to enjoy it. But I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is a huge toy box, and it gives you a million different toys. And at first I'm like, oh my God, look at all my toys. And then as time goes on, the possibility space, the amount of things that you can do with those toys kind of funnels down into a more narrow possibility space. It's like a lot of tools, but a lot of them feel like they do.
Is it can do, or is it worth doing? Because, like,
I mean, I guess that's...
because it broadens really wide. You have so many things you can attach to your shield and your arrows and different contraptions you can make.
But the meaningful outcome of those things, that's a good distinction, actually. Yeah. Is it's not the things... The toy box lets you do whatever, but is there meaningful outcome to those things beyond just, like, making a YouTube short where you're like, oh, there's a spider on my microphone.
Whoa, is that
hold on,
in the game?
Is
that a moment? You're making a YouTube short about that?
I failed my safe check. There was a spider that almost crawled into my nose.
All you see is failed perception in the corner, like over and over again.
Video listeners will get to enjoy that almost crawling inside of my skull. Sorry, that really threw me.
All right.
The thing that I guess that is a good distinction, because it's like, you could make a YouTube video where you're like, I can't believe they let me make like a rocket powered jet car in Zelda, and that's like, okay, but what are you gonna do with that rocket powered jet car? You're gonna shoot around a big giant empty world,
Korok guys across a ravine, like that's all you're doing with that.
Yeah, it feels like a huge set of tools with a very narrow possibility space, whereas Baldur's Gate 3 feels like a more limited set of tools with an incredibly broad possibility space. And I think that's what I was trying to get at with the world design thing earlier, is it doesn't need to be a big giant world, because the way our brains model like video games, the way our brains like experience them isn't as like, we don't map them as physical spaces. You don't map the world of Hyrule as a physical space with topology and depth and height. You map it as an experiential space. Yeah. Like when you tell someone about your experience going from A to B in a big open video game, you're not like, and then I went up and then I went down, and then you're like, all right, then I went like 2.7 kilometers. You're like, I saw a goblin camp and I fought the goblins, and then I was wounded, so I needed to go over here and find band-aids, and like that. The things that our mapping of video games is experiential. And so I feel like even though Baldur's Gate 3, if you put it side by side with a big AAA open world game, it would look like a little toy world, the way it feels to me is much more what I think a video game should feel like: an incredibly broad possibility space with meaningful depth, meaningful like writing. And the last thing I'll say about it is the characters in Baldur's Gate 3, like I actually care about them. Like I care about my mean girlfriend, Lae'zel.
Sorry. Rest in peace, by the way. My apologies. I took her out.
You killed Lae'zel? Okay, well, I'm hanging up the call. Okay, I killed a main
you didn't
character
have girlfriends in Baldur's Gate 3? Okay.
You can have girlfriends. You can have
have
boyfriends.
girlfucks.
You can probably
You can have
fuck a bear.
boyfriends.
I
Okay.
feel like that was a big deal. So you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
You're all the
there's
way in, eh?
fucking in it. And there's like full. You can Frank. There are like 5 different types of penis in the
Wow.
character creator.
That's what I
right,
heard.
Yeah, 2 vulva.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's wild. You can rock penis D if you want and do your thing. But the last thing I'll say is that I as a Zelda lover, I feel like in the old games when I played things like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, the light touch storytelling, the little bits of character that you would get where, you would talk to Zelda for like 4 lines of dialogue and she'd be like, I am the Princess Link and you need to save me. And that was enough. And then the music swells and I'm like crying and I'm like in love for the first time because I'm 9 years old. And
Now you know like
I
her
feel
favorite
like,
fruits, and now you know like where she went on vacation when she was 14. Like, okay, sure.
yeah, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like the Zelda mode of storytelling needs updating because I feel like as I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, as that initial wave of novelty wears off and my brain starts to go, oh, is this just a big empty world with like 6 different types of thing I can do scattered around in it? That's the moment where something like having a really strong narrative thrust it can maintain my immersion for the long run because novelty will not last forever. There is no game more than, like double-digit hours playtime where novelty will carry me the entire way through. Novelty eventually wears off once I get used to the things. And when novelty wears off, I need something of substance. And I think the narrative depth, the quality of writing, the quality of like character design in Baldur's Gate 3, I think those are things that will carry me through for like whatever 140 hours that it takes me to play it because I'm invested in these people now. They're people. We talked about last time how these are characters who have multiplicity. They're like the funny guy, but then you get back to camp and he's like seriously worried about something. And I feel like in Zelda, the most narrative that I get is like, you gotta help the bird village because they don't have enough wind. And then it's like, okay, I got the wind back. And they're like, we love you, Link. You've like helped the birds. And I'm like, okay,
Here's an orb.
I don't care about any of
All
these
right,
people.
Thanks, I guess.
Yeah, here's your orb.
Yeah.
Fucking, I'm out of here. This is, I don't know, whatever. I want to like Tears of the Kingdom. I'm gonna keep trying to beat it eventually, but yeah, it's hard not to compare the two because those are 2 kind of like my big games this year.
No, fair. Yeah, that's a bummer, but I mean, I'm hearing the sentiment more and more. I mean, when Breath of the Wild came out, it feels like it kind of scorched the earth of game discourse, and I know this has been a crazy year for video games, but I don't think I've heard anyone talk about Tears of the Kingdom since like it came out. Like outside of funny gifs of like you were saying and like cute clips of I made a music machine. I don't think I've seen anything on that game, man. No,
It's
no
very
video
memeable.
essays. Where's the video?
I actually was thinking the other day, should I launch my own video essay channel so I don't scorch the earth at Noclip and do a video essay about like, but I just don't want to do like video essays about like why the big game you
like
love is actually bad. Yeah. Why game is bad. Because that's like, no one wants to hear me shit on a thing they like. But I do think, I don't know, I do think in like film criticism, some of the most important voices were dissenting voices who like pushed back against big budget films and what they meant for the industry and for the medium and stuff. And yeah, I think that's harder to do in games. The people I see in games who push back harder against beloved things like The Last of Us 2 and stuff, usually get a lot of harassment. And so it's like, I don't know. It's a real cross to bear if you want to be the guy who is like, maybe this thing you like is like maybe not the best.
Goes one of 2 ways, right? You're either the guy who's like, I hate this, and also minorities for some reason. It's like, why does that always happen? Why is that always the way it goes? Or yeah, you're the person who dislikes things, and all your comments are like, oh, are you a minority? Like, what's up with gamers and minorities? Anyway.
True.
It's weird stuff going on, man. I've been on YouTube for a while. I get a lot of comments. Anyway, video games. Baldur's Gate 3, masterpiece, apparently. Going to survive for the next 50 years. You heard it here first. Jeremy Jane said it.
And I'll commit to that. And I'll put money on that.
Other video games, other stuff going on. Stray Gods came out. I talked about this a couple of months ago now. Whenever I was on last, actually, I feel like I played the demo of it. It's a new game from Summerfall Studios is the name. It's a studio, comes from somebody who worked on Dragon Age, a big Dragon Age head. They worked on, what was the last game they did? Anthem. They worked on a bunch of stuff at EA and sort of splintered off.
Did you say a big Dragon Age Chad?
I didn't, but I should have. That's way funnier.
That's what I thought. I thought you said a big Dragon Age Chad. I was like, wow, that's such a good credential for a game dev. Sorry.
Put that on my resume. No, that's good. That's good. I'm going to start referring to myself as a Chad if I think I'm good at something.
Yeah, you should.
But yeah, Stray Gods is a game for me. It is a game exclusively for me. If you haven't heard of this, you're not missing out. It is for a very specific set of people. So if you're really into musicals, like I am, and it really is a stretch. Maybe I like the odd musical. I used to really be into them when I was a kid. I was in them all the time, in high school and elementary school specifically. I played Black, what's his name? Prince Charming. It was great in a hip hop version of of that. What's Prince Charming from? Is that Snow White?
I don't know. I was going to ask you.
I can't remember. I was just so enthralled
I feel like
with
Snow
myself.
White. That sounds right.
Yeah. But yeah, Stray Gods is a game about musical RPG stuff. So if you like, I think the best way to describe it is it's like a Telltale game if instead of adventuring and like walking through areas and trying to find puzzle pieces, you are just having conversations. It looks like a comic book. There's a bunch of individual figures that appear on the screen that are drawn in this really nice art style, and they sort of fade between them, so there's no like 3D rotation, although there are environments that the characters are placed inside of. But story-wise, you are playing as this woman, Grace, who is looking into the death of a god. Very early on, it's established that Calliope comes to her band meeting. I guess her and her friends run a band, and they're trying to find more musicians to be a part of it. Calliope and her do a duet, and the whole game's not just a musical. There are tons of scenes where characters are talking, but for the most part, what they're doing is they're sort of hashing out this murder mystery that takes place between the Greek pantheon of gods. There's a ton of really high quality voice actors and singers. Troy Baker's one of them. I got to get the whole list because I can't remember. There's so many names. I believe Ashley Johnston's in it. Music actually written by like legit musicians. That's interesting to see.
Yeah, I was curious. I was going to ask you who did the music for it, if it's someone that I might know the name of.
It's not like big name bands or anything, but it's like looks
Bob
like it's
Dylan.
People who do musicals. Let me look here. Yeah, Scott Edgar, Stephen Gates, Simon Hall, Austin Wintory's part of it as well. So there you go. There's one.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
All right, that's one I know.
That's all you need. But yeah, the voice cast: Troy Baker, Laura Bailey, Felicia Day, Raul Coley. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, Ashley Johnson. Yeah, plays Calliope at the start, which is really cool. You can tell right away, which is a good or bad, up to you. But it's a really fantastic story to play through so far. I'm not super far. I'm about at the end of the first day, which isn't too long. But there's something about it. If you like that sort of style of game, Telltale style game, I think you will get a lot out of this. If you don't like musicals, do not play this. For the love of God, do not play this. I feel like, and I was talking to my buddies about this, specifically musicals, but theater in general. I feel like you need a show to like sell you on that genre of media. Because musicals, they'll never make sense to you because like, why are they singing, right? That's the thing I hear every time is like, why are they singing? And that's a completely reasonable position to have. This is not going to sway you. If you didn't like Hamilton, this is not going to be like the thing that makes you like musicals. But if you do like musicals, you get to press buttons sometimes, and that's nice. The big mechanic, by the way, for interacting with the songs is you're kind of picking the lyrics as things go along. So there will be a character who's like emo and trying to like sort out their emotions. Like, oh my God, I'm so sad. My girlfriend's dead. And you have to like help him come to terms with that. And you're trying to get his assistance, or are you? And you can like tell him to, hit the road. So there's lots of moments where you can, based on your personality and your play style and the ways you want to react to these characters, decide things. And the things that you say to them and the personality traits that you pick determine what narrative choices you have. Like we were saying with Baldur's Gate, right? The less things you can interact with and the more opportunities you see that you've missed out on, the more you want to go back. Like now I want to go back and like, what if I said this instead? Like, could I say this to this person? And like, how does that unravel the sort of murder mystery that's taking place? So I'm really liking it so far. It's on PS4. It's 40 Canadian dollars. I don't know how much that is in American, like $10. It's not. It's like $30 or something. But it's definitely worth your time if you like that style of game and you like musicals. You guys like musicals at all? You musical fans?
I do.
Frankie,
I
musical
don't
fan?
like watch everything, but I loved Hamilton. Hamilton made me cry. I was blown away by it. Like even Barbie's a musical.
Nice.
Like I like
true.
when films are campy and like the tone is everything, and if it's like legit or not. Like I don't care about Glee or Hamilton. No. I'm trying to think of High School Musical. Like it's. I don't know, but if it wins me over, then I'm all in. So yeah, I don't chase every musical, but if it's good and earnest and tight, then I like it. My question, like
Right.
you were saying, like, so it's like, yeah, there's dialogue. You can choose like a Telltale game. So it's like, will they sing your answers like as you whether you pick line A, line B, or line C? Does it matter if it rhymes
Sort of,
or
yeah.
what?
So It's yeah, I really like the songs in it, but it has that musical thing where like sometimes they're just singing a sentence and it doesn't necessarily rhyme all the time, which is okay. But yeah, so you will pick a line usually in response to another character, and you don't pick the whole line, but you'll pick like the idea for the line. Like, do you want to be sassy? Pick the obvious sassy one. Sometimes they're color coded. Like red is you're a badass, I think is what they call it. You're a badass. Green's charisma, and like blue is curious. So you pick one of those, and that sort of decides the tone that your response has. I haven't played through all of the scenarios yet, obviously, but I think it's pretty clear, like, you can make serious narrative choices. Like, very early on, you get to decide if a pretty cool character comes with you or not. I think his name's Pan, which is cool, from Greek sort of mythology. Horns, it's like a tiefling. I got excited. And you get to decide if they want him, you want this guy to come along with you or not. You want to stick with your buddy, you want to just do whatever, you want to go solo, and you can choose those while the song's going on. So, and they do this cool thing where like, it separates the scene. So you'll be in an apartment, which is like in 3D and like has 3D elements and like 2D elements. It's they do it well. It looks good. But then it'll cut to black, and there will be like, you're in this set where like a tree, and there's like a little pond underneath, and it is rippling, and it looks beautiful. It's very Hades looking, by the way, which feels unfair because it's Greek stuff, but it does, you kind of can't escape the immediate visual comparison. But it's a blast. I think I'll keep saying it. If you like musicals, there's really no reason to not play this. It's a blast.
I'm gonna give this a shot. This is my feeling on musicals, and I feel like it's a paradoxical feeling. I love music and I love theater, and I am not opposed to musical theater, but I'm not a huge fan of like campiness as a tone.
Right.
And I feel like saying you don't like camp but you like musicals is saying you like Indian food but you hate spicy food or something.
Right.
Like it's like the primary. You're like, I love Indian food. I can't stand that curry stuff. Like it's kind of one of the primary ingredients in musical theater. So I don't know. Is there like a real sincere piece of musical theater that isn't like John Waters-esque? I like John Waters too, but just like, I don't know. That's not my primary
I think you gotta
flavor.
buy the camp. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I
was gonna say like West Side Story is like from the 50s, and that movie blew me away. Like I really like that movie. Like it's really, and you know,
even the Spielberg one is
great.
I
heard that's good too. Yeah, but
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna check that out. That's the one with the guys where they,
the
like,
Sharks
snap
and the
real
Jets.
intense,
Hey, who are
right?
you talking to?
Yeah.
What's going
That's
on,
cool.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
All right.
What do you want?
Okay, that sounds cool. All right, musical theater where dudes are like
seriously,
fighting and
the
stuff. I think
the
that's
50s West Side Story is dope. Like there's
Grease.
Oh, ooh.
Oh, Grease is
Yeah,
pretty good.
Grease
Grease
is
is pretty
great,
good. I when I was in high school, I had a girlfriend that went to a different school, except it was actually true. She did go to a different school.
Sure. Yeah,
but she was really into musical theater, so I would go to their performances. And this is a true story, man. She's real, and her name is Lamp.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
So they did a performance, like they did like a bunch of, they would choose their own performances, what shows they did, and they did Chicago, which is a very racy show for like a bunch of 16-year-olds to do. And I remember how awkward it was that it was like all the parents came, and it was just like a bunch of like high schoolers in like lingerie and shit. And it was so weird. It was like such an odd, I don't know. That was like the most salient musical theater memory of mine because it was so bizarre. So I don't know. Maybe they also did Grease though. That's why this traumatic memory came flooding back to me. But anyway, I'm gonna give this game a shot. Is there like, I need like a Fallout low intelligence playthrough where they're like the lines they give you, or they like don't really rhyme, and you're like, fuck,
Why
like
are
they're
we
all
singing
doing perfect
every line? Why are sing?
Yeah. Or like he's trying his best, like everyone's like doing perfect, iambic pentameter and stuff, and he's like, there's a tree over there, and he's like trying his best, but he doesn't know what to say.
I like that for you, the
like,
default low intelligence is like a walk in here. You just go straight to the...
it's like, yeah, that's my like Boston guy voice.
Hey, by the way, Boston was a blast. I don't know if I talked to you guys about that. Boston was really cool.
Dude, what are the highlights other than your $400 lobster roll?
Yeah, that was too much money. That was a ripoff. Lobster, fine. Yeah, Boston was cool. Boston, I think, is a city with stuff in it. Highlights had to have been going to the New England Aquarium. It was very cool, seeing the penguins.
Yes, it's so good.
And then the two-parter of going to the Boston Tea Party reenactment, where they like put you on a boat and you get to go fly a whole lot and yell. That was too much money for what it was, but it was kind of cool, and I liked the reenactment. And then the second part of it was we went to Old Boston right before we left because we needed to waste some time before our flight. And we went to the Old North Church, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Where like they did the British are coming. There's the how many lamps are there? Or lanterns. They didn't have lamps back then. Wouldn't that be wild? They had like light bulbs. They're the only light bulbs. But whatever. That's
Paul Revere actually was the first guy with a flashlight. He was like, "You'll see me flashing my flashlight." And they're like, "Wait, you gotta back up. What is that thing you're holding, and why is it glowing?"
Don't worry about it. He had like a smartphone taking pictures.
Yeah, we don't have time. I'll get into this later.
But we're there and we're sort of like looking around and reading the history, and then we get to one point and it's like Paul Revere was one of 40 people who ran by night and did all this, and he got arrested before he even made it to the end. And I'm talking to the lady who's doing the sort of history tour, and I'm like, is that for real? It was more than Paul Revere? She's like,